1987, the border between France and Spain was a real wall that had to be paid for border steps legally and by the mountains clandestinely. The border between Spain and France, for us, the Basques, was very porous. We spent frequently through Irun because two things to buy, sometimes simply food products, to buy books, which in Spain were not, to spend vacations. We, as Spanish officials, were not on vacation, we were going to work. Received. 2 men and a woman? Change? What happens is that there was a time when care had to be careful, right? Only 2 men go. Attention. Only 2 men go. Because where we were going to buy, we were going to spend a few days on vacation. It was also the place where ETA retired and remained. They took refuge in France. Then the border was a place that allowed them to live with some freedom and hide when they were interested and had to flee from the police forces. Then there is another border, which was the border of the Mugalaris, which was already done through. Not the road and with passports, but in a clandestine way. The truth is that passing the border wasn't very difficult. I spent several times, besides, it passed. In 1987, democracy already begins to settle, but ETA terrorism is still very present in the life of the Spaniards daily. Every day there were attacks. I discovered ETA for the first time when I arrived in Bayona, at the time in '77. I was coordinator of Basque Affairs in the DGSI, General Directorate of Internal Security, that is, responsible for the entire fight against ETA in France. It had been arrived, I believe that, at a point where everyone thought that neither ETA could win the state nor the state could win ETA. That infinite tie theory, each tries to break somewhere. ETA tries to break it killing a lot, killing more. To describe ETA, they are murderers. ETA was not a terrorism that had no face and eyes. Many families from Bilbao, San Sebastian, from Vitoria, had children, nephews, cousins, or we even had friends or fellow students who played in ETA. Franco is the main reason why I get into ETA. In my house, both my mother and my father were left-wing people. My father was a Republican. He agreed that a classmate offered me to enter ETA. And, well, we were painted, we made pasquins, but the Fifth Assembly arrived, and the thing changed. I knew how to disarm a gun. In Etano, there were more than one who knew, and that we knew how a gun was disassembled and cleaned. And with the bombs, because something happened like the style. I knew that with the alarm clock, a battery, a cable, and some stroke could be made a bomb, right? I did not put bombs, but I did bomb. I was not a nationalist. The nationalist mysticism did not live, that my colleagues threw it in face. They told me, you are not a culturally Basque, you are an anti-Franchist. They even threatened me. Once we make the revolution, we will have problems with you. It is in its origins deceives everyone and stands as an anti-Franco movement. Many people buy it, France included. ETA was never anti-Franco. It was always anti-Española. When Franco dies, ETA, if it had really been an anti-Franco movement, would have ended its history. He did not. In fact, ETA killed much more in democracy because democracy consolidated the territorial and political status of the Spanish nation, which included, without any doubt, the Basque country and Navarra. The only way that ETA survived was to continue with the armed struggle, and that repression occurred to be able to say that it was not an authentic democracy and that Franco continued. The Civil Guard is an obsession for ETA for a fundamental reason, because it is an armed institute, but of a military nature. When attacking the civil guard, he threatened the army. The civil guard was a myth of repressive enemy, demonic almost, in the imaginary of ETA, executioner of the healthy aspirations of freedom of the Basque people. ETA chose the civil guard as its main enemy, and for us it was already a matter of survival. Survival because we played in them our lives and those of our families. ETA killed civil guards, wives and children of civil guards. The civil guard was an easy target because barracks were grouped and there lived the civil guards with their families, and therefore it was a relatively simple and well-identified target to do them a lot of damage. One of the terrorists who was driving the car bomb launched at high speed at the entrance of the barracks, where the civil guard operational units are found. Moments later, he left him to flee in another car. The way to do more damage to the civil guard was not to kill a partner. He was not killing a command. He was killing his children and his women and his family. With the civil guard, they were particularly cruel. Particularly cruel. I am a civil guard of information. I should not tell you, I'm putting my life and in passing yours, but I already made the mistake of not saying it. Mario, listen to me. You are from outside, but there are people who are willing to kill me for being captain of the civil guard. All the civil guards and police who were there were threatened. The civil guards because they generally lived in the barracks, but those who lived outside the barracks, in their homes, because they could not hang the clothes, the uniform, the shopkeeper of the house, because they knew immediately that a civil guard or a policeman lived there and passed the information to an ETA terrorist. That knife that breaks the Basque society that was ETA made the civil guard end up being part of a challenge outside of Basque society. That situation that lived with constant pressure to have to go out and look under the car to see if there was a pump. They went to a place to eat or have a beer and placed themselves in a corner, always looking towards the door to be protected. That North syndrome became a kind of psychiatric disease, right? Are you seeing yourself? Do you know that I don't recognize you? The doctor says you suffer from insomnia. Nothing happens to me. Do you know what happens when one of my men begins to invent excuses so as not to take their vacation as you do? That I break my balls because it worries me. The ETA commands went to Spain in what they called campaigns. There were several months, 5 months, 6 months, killed a lot. You could find a command that had been in Madrid killing and then returned to its resting places, refuge, in the towns of southern France. The French Basque country is a part of the Atlantic Pyrenees, the Department of Atlantic Pyrenees, and is part of the territory of the French Republic. For Etaras and Paralde is part of the Basque country, it is the North Euskadi that forms a whole with the 3 Basque provinces and with Navarra. That is, 7 in 1. The members of the command and many militants passed to the north, pass in France. Yes, it happened. People were in cafes playing the moose. Politically, nothing happens. Do you want a cane? No thanks. It is true that you don't drink. There was the idea that ETAs killed here in the morning and they went to France to take pots in the afternoon, right? It can be said that France was a sanctuary for ETA. Of course, at that time, they were very calm. When the story is written, the indifference of the successive French governments is a front. They link the ETA movement to anti-Franchism a bit. They thought Spanish democracy was fragile. They did not have a behavior at the height of the circumstances. France cost many years to believe that in Spain there was authentic democracy. The fable that ET had mounted almost had a better reception in France than in Spain, right? ETA lived in France, its structures were in France, its rear was in France. The key was in France because the key was in France. You always had a feeling of helplessness above the border. The Mugas in the Basque country were perfectly defined, where they moved and where they entered and came out. We were waiting. There were groups of civil guards than those we had on the mountain several days, in certain positions, more sensitive. Red Alpha in position. Change. High, civil guards. High, civil guards. A governor of the Basque country, completely from Gipuzkoa, who was a man with a lot of imagination, came to make some granite stones that were there on the mountain with an inside camera. They set up some pedruscos with sensors to detain civil guards or police. They took pictures of wild boars, from roes, of such, but not to any terrorist. All of us who were on horseback of the border between Spain and France, at some point we were involved in some incident that some resolved it well, others solved it to the brave. With the issue they had in Spain, Spanish services had to cross the border clandestinely. I have in memory a problem that arose to that time, especially some detainee police. This of crossing the border at a clean shot. No, but we have intercepted an active command of ETA, we were chasing one of its members. And others, because someone had to come to get you out of some quagmire. I have to apologize for crossing the border, sorry. The first years of Franco-Spanish collaboration cannot be called Franco-Spanish collaboration. It was a collaboration between police from both countries where, for some situation, you knew a policeman from another country. The collaboration between French and Spanish services was punctual. That is, they were mostly from one side of the border to another, at the local level, between San Sebastián, Andaya, etc. That was, yes, that has always existed. The grandmother who had the French police in Spain, who was the one who prepared and paid her the summer and such. Well, that is so. The relationship between police existed at that level, right? That is, you help me, I help you. There was a command, which was the Agala command. There were a lot of years that the itinerant command made us a lot. That was the deadliest command that ETA had, composed only of French. Only the chief of ETA knew about this command. We were very clueless with the number of important attacks he made. Today in Madrid, tomorrow in Seville. He moved a lot. He entered, made an attack, and left. Bang. They killed 1, 2, 3, and left. It was very difficult, indeed, to find those people. And we get it in a control around Seville. I had contact with the colonel of the civil guard who was in the embassy to Paris. He calls me one night telling me that they have stopped a Frenchman during a shooting. How is your relationship with that friend of yours from the DCRG? Leon Reno? He is not a friend. Too similar. France sent Alain Ortega to the best agents they had in the fight against ETA. And from there, both they discovered that the civil guard had good information, and the civil guard discovered that the French information service was a service at the same level as us. And it tells me, well, it is the one that was on the subject of Seville. And it was Manolo. As always in this type of meetings, of contacts, the first link is the professional link. Neither one or the other were by Amonadare. When there was something very confidential, we are going to say, in France, the only one who knew was Mandolo. And when there was something very confidential in Spain, the only one who knew, I am. The work is also transformed into friendship, etc. And better in better. We are in 2025. We have already had enough time to become friends. We are friends, brothers. This area of France lived from tourism, agriculture. The attacks, the shootings, do not feel them well. They worry me. It is the gale. And to me, that the south of France is a sanctuary of ETA. Throughout 50 years of fighting ETA terrorism, not everything was roses. The anti-terrorist groups of liberation, the GAL, which is a concert of people who had instruments of power and opaque financing capacity to introduce a new element in the anti-terrorism struggle, which was the murder of the murderers. A state terrorism. It can be understood on a political level and did nothing in France on this issue at the time. The French government was also deeply bothering to act. And hence the terrorist actions of the GALs occur fundamentally in France. Look, you have a very powerful terrorist group there. There are people who fight it in all possible ways, including resorting to dirty war, and, therefore, you will also live closely what the terrorist attacks are in your territory. Were they had a cons regulations? The problem of the GARF, as they were, that is, with thugs, was that they did anything completely indiscriminate attack.